The silent entrance. The galactic citadel floated above a silent planet that had no name and no claim. It was built from ancient alloys and energy fields unknown to many younger civilizations. Inside the Great Council Hall was a ring of thrones where representatives from every advanced species gathered. Their voices echoed in different tones and pulses. Some used vocal cords, some used telepathy. A few used light patterns flashing across their skins. But all had one purpose: to keep peace between the stars. Every delegation had arrived with their personal guards, tall ones with scales that shimmered like fire, others that looked like moving statues made of black stone. Some hovered instead of walking. Each guard was equipped with armor and weapons shaped by their world's fear and technology. Swords that could slice atoms, rifles that warped time, drones that floated like ghosts ready to protect and destroy. Then came the humans. A soft sound followed their steps as they entered. Leather shoes on crystal floors. 5 of them walked behind the human ambassador. They wore matching uniforms, plain gray with no badge or emblem. Their hands hung freely by their sides. No weapons were visible, no armor pressed against their bodies. They looked like workers or messengers, not soldiers. The room shifted in mood whispers. In dozens of languages rose across the chamber. Some delegates exchanged looks, some scoffed. One laughed loudly in a high-pitched voice that echoed like broken glass. That was Rilm from the Seric species known for their sharp tongues and sharper blades. He leaned forward and pointed at the human guards. They are unarmed. Why bring sheep to a council of predators? Do humans not understand danger? The human ambassador paused near the center and turned slowly to face the voices. His eyes scanned the room without fear or anger. His voice remained calm and steady. They carry no weapons because they need none. Silence fell like snow across the hall. It was not the words. It was the way they were spoken. No pride, no threat, only truth. One delegate with blue vines for limbs tapped the energy scanner fixed near his seat. The result flashed. No energy signature detected from any of the guards. No hidden blades. No sonic bursts. Nothing at all. Another species called for a scan from the Central Council system. Again the result came back clean. More confusion followed. How could any species walk into this place without defense? How could they protect their ambassador? If something went wrong, the oldest species in the council, the Mirai, spoke at last. They had lived through 10 galactic wars and had learned to speak only when needed. Their voice was like wind brushing through dry leaves. There are only 2 reasons a species would come unarmed. They are foolish beyond reason, or they have become something far beyond weapons. Human ambassador gave a slight nod. No more words were offered. He walked to his seat and sat calmly. His guards stood still behind him like statues of flesh and bone. They showed no movement, not even a glance toward the others. Eyes forward, posture relaxed, breath steady. The meeting began. Agendas were read. Arguments flared over mining rights on asteroid belts. Disputes about border patrols near wormholes continued. But every few minutes someone would glance at the human guards. They were doing nothing, saying nothing, yet they pulled attention like gravity. The one called Rilm whispered to his second officer, "Perhaps humans are simply foolish. Perhaps they believe this council is safe. Or perhaps they hide something far worse than guns." After the session ended, many delegates left the hall quickly. Some looked back over their shoulders, as if expecting the unarmed guards to move at last, but they never did. Not until their ambassador stood and nodded once. Only then did they turn and follow him out with the same quiet steps as before. Later that day, in private chambers across the citadel, the conversation repeated itself again and again. Why unarmed? Why confident? Why unafraid? No answer came that satisfied everyone, and unanswered questions always breed fear. One thing was certain. This was not the last time the council would speak of human guards, and soon would learn the reason behind their silence, and they would wish they had not. The council's doubts, whispers moved like wind through the chambers of the citadel. They traveled across walls that had seen empires fall and rise. They echoed in the ears of delegates who had faced war and betrayal. And now those whispers all shared one subject. The humans, more specifically, their guards. The ones who carried nothing. The ones who said nothing. The ones who watched everything without blinking inside. A dimly lit council room, a group of senior delegates sat around a glowing sphere. Each one represented a different sector. They were not allies. They were not enemies, but in that room they shared one question. Why did humans feel safe enough to bring unarmed guards into a place filled with danger? One delegate, with golden skin and eyes like glass, spoke first. He asked if humans had developed some cloaked defense system, something invisible, something untraceable. Another delegate with 6 fingers on each hand shook his head and shared the results of the deep scans. Nothing had been found, not even microweapons or defense chips. A Jinengo. Third voice suggested biological enhancements. Maybe the guards were not ordinary. Maybe they had changed their own kind from within, turned flesh into armor, blood into code, a theory that made some lean back in discomfort. If true, it would mean humans had begun altering themselves in ways others feared to explore. An old delegate with faded markings on his face stood up and walked slowly around the room. He reminded everyone that humans were still considered a young species, but young did not mean weak. They had survived countless internal wars. They had thrived on a world filled with predators and disasters. They had sent machines to stars before many species even left their atmosphere. He said quietly that only a fool believes a quiet forest holds no danger. Sometimes silence is the final warning before the storm. Later that cycle, one of the military observers filed a report. It stated that the posture of the human guards was not casual. It followed a perfect formation pattern known in elite training programs. Balanced steps, even spacing, no wasted movement, no nervous shifting. They behaved not like bodyguards, but like weapons waiting for purpose. Another report came from the technology division. It analyzed a slowed-down recording of the human ambassador's entrance. The guards scanned every angle of the room without moving their heads. Their eyes tracked 15 potential threats before sitting down, all in the first 10 seconds. This was not chance. This was discipline at its highest form. Some council members grew uneasy. They began to wonder if the unarmed nature of the humans was a statement, not of peace but of control. Others dismissed the fear. They argued that humans lacked numbers, lacked territory, lacked influence. What threat could a few quiet guards really pose against galactic fleets and starborn armies? The debate reached a peak during the second meeting of the month. One of the more aggressive species proposed an unscheduled security drill, a simulated breach. Nothing real, just a test. They claimed it was for overall council safety, but many understood the hidden purpose. They wanted to see how humans would react. Drill was approved with a narrow vote. Alarms were set to trigger during the next gathering. Security bots would enter the room. A harmless light pulse would fire. No damage, no real danger, just enough tension to observe. Word of the drill spread quietly. Some species prepared their guards. Others made no changes. Only the humans remained as they were. No weapons, no armor, no words. The day of the drill arrived. The hall buzzed with anticipation. Some watched the humans more than they watched the proceedings. They waited. They studied every breath, every glance, every step. Then the alarm sounded. A high-pitched tone filled the room. Lights dimmed. Security bots entered from hidden walls. They moved fast, targeting random locations as scripted. One bot faced the human guard, standing closest to the central pillar. A beam of harmless light began to charge. A flicker of green and blue swirled at the core. No one expected the human to move. They had assumed humans would step aside, take cover, or freeze like prey, but the guard stepped forward instead. 1 step, 2 steps. The bot adjusted. The beam fired. What followed happened so fast that many only saw it on replay later. The human blurred. No teleport, no shield, just pure motion. He moved beneath the beam and reached the bot in less than 1 breath. His hand touched the bot's arm. The bot shut down instantly and fell to the ground. No one spoke. No one blinked. Even the ambassador remained silent. Later that night, surveillance footage was studied frame by frame. The guards' movement broke timing limits, no enhancements were visible, just raw precision, refined. Speed, total control. More frightening was the look in his eyes. There was no panic, no excitement, only calm, as if he had done this many times before, as if this was still beneath his true ability. The report reached the council within hours, and the whispers returned stronger than before. These guards do not carry weapons, because they are the weapon. And in that moment, the council stopped laughing. The test, the silence that followed the incident grew heavier with every passing hour. No one said it openly, but fear had slipped into the council chambers. Fear not of warships or weapons, fear not of explosions or invasions, but fear of stillness, of precision, of control, hidden behind calm faces and soft footsteps. The footage of the human guard disabling the bot had been seen by every major intelligence branch in the galaxy. It had been replayed in slow motion, dissected by machines, studied by generals. None could explain how it was possible. No enhancement was found, no cyber implants, no time-warping devices. It was simply movement, fast, accurate, lethal. Meetings continued in the days that followed, but the atmosphere had changed. The humans returned as usual. 5 guards, same uniforms, same formation, same silence. Every other delegation began making quiet changes. Some added more guards. Others requested new scanners. Some positioned their soldiers closer to their seats. One species even brought an entire drone cloud that hovered constantly above their heads like a metal storm. Humans made no changes. They entered, they stood, they watched. A few members of the council began whispering new ideas. Ideas of caution, ideas of suspicion. One delegate spoke with others in private. He suggested creating a situation, a moment, something small, just enough to force the humans to act again. At first the others hesitated, but curiosity had already taken root. They needed to know the truth. Were the humans truly harmless or hiding power too great to measure? A meeting was arranged under the excuse of discussing trade routes near the collapsed star cluster. It was set in a deeper chamber of the Citadel. Less security, more shadows. The perfect place for a quiet test. The humans arrived on time, no delays, same number, same pattern. Discussion began slowly. Trade disagreements were spoken in low voices. Charts and maps appeared in the center of the room. It felt routine until the lights flickered. A cold pulse rolled through the floor. The chamber doors slid shut with a sound that echoed like a whisper from the void. Then came the sound of metal scraping, not loud but sharp, close and deliberate. From a hidden panel, 2 mechanical units emerged, not bots, but something older, something banned by several alliances. They had been reactivated for this moment. No weapons, just movement, aggression in form, shaped to provoke, not harm. The machines walked toward the human guards without warning. One reached out a claw. Not fast, not lethal, just contact, just enough. The nearest human tilted his head slightly. He did not step back. He did not raise his hands. Instead, he stepped forward and placed his palm gently on the machine's chest. Nothing happened for a breath. Then the machine stopped moving, its lights faded, it powered down completely without damage. The second machine turned toward the other guards. 2 humans moved this time. No rush, no panic. They approached the machine from opposite sides. One touched the base of its leg, the other touched the back of its head. Again, no violence, just touch. The machine powered down silently. No words were spoken. The council delegates stared in frozen disbelief. The humans returned to their original positions. No reaction in their eyes, no signs of pride. They had not attacked. They had not defended. They had simply ended the test before it could begin. The human ambassador remained seated the entire time. Hands folded, face calm. He spoke after a long pause. Please let us know if this experiment is complete. We would prefer to return to peaceful matters. One of the delegates tried to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He looked at the machines, then at the guards, then lowered his head. Chamber doors reopened. The lights returned. The session ended without further words. Hours later, reports flowed through the Citadel. Old treaties were reviewed, security laws were rewritten. Every species that had once mocked the humans now met in quiet rooms. They began asking new questions. What training produced such guards? What kind of mind allowed them to react without fear? How did they move in perfect balance? Why did they never carry weapons? Some believed it was a hidden device. Others thought it was a rare mutation. A few whispered of ancient techniques long forgotten by the stars. But those who had seen the guards up close, those who had watched their eyes during the test, they knew it was something deeper. It was not technology. It was not mutation. It was something born from struggle, forged through generations. A discipline shaped not in labs, but in experience. The humans had chosen silence. They had chosen stillness. But now the council had seen beneath the surface. The unarmed guards were not a sign of peace. They were a warning. One delegate wrote in a private journal that night. The humans carry no weapons because they are made of war, and they fear what they might become if they ever pick one up again. That message was never shared, but it echoed in the minds of many, and it would not be forgotten. The truth comes out. The Citadel's inner halls began to carry a strange weight, not physical, not spoken, but it settled into the air like unseen fog. Something had shifted among the council members. No official announcement had been made. No law had changed. Yet behavior was no longer the same. Guards that once stood tall now held a hint of tension in their stance. Delegates that once mocked now spoke with caution. Species that once competed now whispered together in corners, and always eyes would return to the human delegation. It was not just the test in the lower chamber that stirred the storm. It was the aftermath. The way the humans returned to their silence, unshaken, unmoved, untouched by the fear they caused, as if what had happened was beneath their concern, as if the display was not meant to impress, but to reminding. A private council chamber. The oldest members met once more. They spoke softly. Some used words. Some shared thoughts through direct neural links. All asked the same question. What are the humans hiding? One member brought forward a file. It had no council stamp, no signature, only a name. A name translated into standard speech. His gray hand, he placed it before the others. They hesitated. They feared what opening it might mean, but curiosity had already taken root too deeply. Inside were records, fragments pulled from forgotten corners of data networks. Old footage, training logs, scanned notes from human military archives that were never meant to leave Earth. The project known as Gray Hand was not about building weapons. It was about building people. Humans stripped of distraction, stripped of pride, molded through pain, sharpened through silence. The program accepted few. Most failed to endure. Those who succeeded did not become soldiers. They became something else. Something quieter, something more precise. They were trained to observe first, to study pressure points in minds as well as bodies, to read emotion like a map, to predict action before movement began. They trained until fear no longer reached them, until hesitation no longer touched them, until violence became the final option, not through restraint, but through readiness. The report ended with a warning. Gray Hand operatives do not carry weapons. They are considered unsafe when armed, because their presence alone can end conflict. Without force, the council chamber grew still. Some wanted to dismiss it. They said the report could be false human propaganda, a myth made to spread fear. But others had seen the way those guards moved. They remembered how the machines failed without resistance. They recalled the stillness that followed every encounter. One voice in the chamber finally said what others feared to speak. They do not fear us, because they have already prepared for every outcome, even the ones we cannot imagine. The information was not released to the wider council, but rumors began to leak, and with those whispers came change. At the next official meeting, new rules were proposed. Restrictions on security systems, limitations on guard behavior, suggestions for reducing tensions. Within the chamber, the humans agreed to all without hesitation. They accepted every change with calm expressions. Their guards stood the same way they always had. Without weapons, without armor, without fear. One delegate asked the human ambassador directly, why do you allow such rules? Do they not weaken your position? The ambassador replied with a voice that held no pride. Only certainty. We are not here to frighten. We are here to cooperate. But know this. Fear never comes from weapons. It comes from what cannot. Be stopped. That answer spread like wildfire across the citadel, across comms into military reports, into the quiet fears of command centers light years away. Some thought it was a threat. Some believed it was peace. But no one challenged it. One junior analyst wrote in her notes that humans had mastered the most dangerous form of presence, the ability to change a room without changing. Expression, the ability to shift an entire council without lifting a hand, and still, the guards said nothing. They walked the same halls, took the same positions, watched with eyes that never wavered. Delegates, who once viewed them as decoration, now watched for subtle signs. A tilt of the head, a shift of the foot, a flicker of muscle beneath fabric. They looked for signs but found none, only control, and deep inside the minds of those who governed galaxies, a truth began to settle. Weapons could be seen, measured, defended. But this was something else. The humans had removed fear from their own minds, and in doing so they had placed it into the hearts of others. A message delivered the citadel, now breathed with quiet discipline. No longer did the air carry the careless sound of laughter during human arrivals. No longer did the curious glance at their guards with amusement. Now silence followed their footsteps like a shadow that stretched across the chamber. The next meeting was not like the others. A new motion had been raised, a proposal set by the human delegation, one that offered peace, one that requested unity, one that carried no warning, only purpose. The motion was clear. It called for a ban on armed personnel within council meetings. It suggested a shared trust, a gesture of respect, a symbolic step toward a future built on dialogue, not deterrence. Some expected resistance. Some believed old allies would reject the change. But when the vote began, no voices rose in protest. No hands lifted in refusal. One by one, the seats lit with green approval. The proposal passed, without debate, without fear. As the vote closed, a calm settled into the room. A sense of something unspoken, something understood beyond language. The human ambassador stood slowly. He looked around the chamber with steady eyes. No pride, no joy, only a quiet knowing. He thanked the council for their wisdom. He offered hope that this would begin a new chapter. A chapter where species listened, where strength was measured not by weapons, but by restraint. Then he sat again, and the guards behind him stood still, unmoving, unarmed, unshaken across the hall. Other guards lowered their weapons, some with hesitation, some with relief. The heavy metal plates that once covered every entrance were rolled back. The drones that once hovered near the ceilings faded into charging bays for the first time. In many cycles, the citadel stood bare, and in that bareness, there was peace outside the chamber. The effect was immediate. News streams across the stars shared the vote, shared the image of human guards standing without armor in a hall of power, shared the words of the ambassador. But more than words, they shared the silence. Fleet commanders studied the footage. Strategists watched the body language. Psychologists reviewed every blink. They searched for threat, for advantage, for flaw. They found none. What they found instead was something older than conflict, older than fear, a presence that came from balance, from history written in hardship, from survival against odds that broke empires. The humans had faced extinction long before they reached the stars. They had walked through fire, through cold, through betrayal. They had learned to bend, not to break. And in that bending, they had become something stronger than most could understand. One council observer wrote in her private report that the unarmed human guard represented a new type of weapon, not one of violence, but one of will. She described it as the ability to absorb pressure without response, to wait, to measure, to know when to act, and when to stand still. She said the galaxy had known many conquerors, many tyrants, but few beings who mastered control without dominance. Her report was never published, but it was shared quietly among those who studied power. In the months that followed, the motions passing other species began Adjusting their own security policies, training shifted. Discipline was emphasized, new programs were built. Programs focused not on creating warriors, but on creating guardians. The word guardian spread through military schools. It replaced the word soldier in many languages. It became a title of honor. And the model was always the same. The human guard who stood with empty hands and a mind full of resolve. In one distant corner of the galaxy, a young recruit stood before his instructor and asked a question. He asked why humans never showed aggression, even when challenged. The instructor paused and replied slowly, because those who understand their strength do not need to prove it. The recruit nodded, and in that moment, a lesson was passed back. At the Citadel, a new memorial was placed, not made of metal, not carved from stone, but shaped from light. It stood near the main entrance. A simple projection, 5 human figures standing still, unarmed, unmoving. No names, no symbols, no message, only presence. Visitors paused before it. Some walked by with quiet respect. Some stopped longer, staring, trying to understand what they felt. They could not explain it, but they understood. The council had changed. The galaxy had listened, and humanity, without raising a hand, had delivered a message that did not need to be shouted, a message that lived in silence, in stillness, in strength, held in restraint. They do not bring weapons because they do not need them. They are not here to conquer. They are not here to submit. They are here to remind the stars that true power never has to speak the end.